All right, Sharad, over to you.
All
Let's get
right,
started with
welcome
second
back
part.
to this part two of the book, Same as Ever by Morgan Housel. And we have already covered a lot. And let me just do a quick revision, 2 minute revision, so that you can recall exactly what we spoke about, so that you are not missing the bigger picture when we speak about the next good 10, 12 chapters today. So the first introduction was that not few things don't change. And what are those few things which don't change? They are the fear, the greed, the jealousy, the ambition. They will not change 500 years down the line. They will not change here. I mean, there was as it is 500 years back. So what we are keen on is that understand what will not change rather than what will change. And that is how the Amazon has been very carefully crafting, uh, that what he has to do today so that he live up to the reputation. Then we spoke about the chapter hanging by a thread. We spoke about that many events happen, which are purely based on luck. And so hence forecasting is very tough. We all try to forecast the market, but some events just don't make sense. They happen, and so ideally we should look at a broader perspective when we are trying to look, in terms of investing. Then we spoke about risk, and risk is something what we don't see. We spoke about that the risk is generally created by the surprises. We are very good at predicting, but we are very bad at predicting the surprises. And everything which actually makes a difference in the market are the surprises, not the routine events, because the routine events quickly get factored in the market. Anything which we already know which has happened doesn't make a difference to the market. Please understand, it is only the surprises, and the surprises will keep surprising you for the next 100 years. So we also spoke about the law of large number, if you remember that in a small base, we may go wrong. And we spoke about the, say, lightning, light, somebody getting struck by lightning, though it looks like a 1 in a million risk. But when we take the 8 billion population, it is actually 8,000 people. And we calculated 8,000 people are the ones in a year who will get impacted by the lightning. So the law of large number tells you that don't get fooled by the smaller base or a smaller sample. This will not give you the correct picture. And then we spoke about wild minds, that some people do make a lot of difference. They are the ones who have changed the history of America or India. And one of the example we gave was Elon Musk, who has a very sharp mind, but also is a very weird character. So we have to accept him in totality. We cannot just be only thinking that he's a weird and think in that perspective. And lastly, we spoke about that few things don't compute, and a lot of things don't make sense because there are a lot of emotions involved. And if you're trying to find a number, for example, a lot of times we try to find the intrinsic value, the valuation of a company, just to arrive what is the correct price to get in. We are not able to, because that is just a number, and then there is a story connected to that number, which is very important to understand, right? So story plus number gives you the valuation, which is very difficult to find out because the stories keep on changing. Now, with that, let's get to the chapter number 8, and that is this chapter. So, how should we read the headline? What is the chapter talks about? Is it "Calm plants the seed of crazy"? Madai, can you make out
Yes,
the
yes,
title?
yes, it is.
Calm plants the seed of crazy. No, you can look at it, but can you read it? Calm plants the seed of crazy. What do you mean by Vishal? Calm plants the seed of crazy. Anything it can tell you right away. What is the chapter going to be about?
Or maybe it's trying to tell that, about the nature of the person and how it can change, as the seeds and as it grows and what it can change to actually.
Okay. So let's read it like this: calm, then pause, and then say plants the seed of crazy. So when there is a prosperity and stability around, you know, that is the biggest uh, time to be feared about, because that will change the scenario and it will result into some kind of chaos in life. So it is calm, plants the seed of crazy, right? So there is a life cycle of greed and fear. Now, entire
So,
these
Sharad,
points.
are you saying Tufan pehle ki shanti?
बस अमेजिंग,
Kind of.
दैट इज एग्जैक्टली, इसीलिए मैंने कहा कि काम पे रुक जाओ एंड देन से प्लांट्स द सीड ऑफ क्रेजी. So yes, so all the prosperity and stability time, and we will talk about Michael Morris, who said, "I'm paranoid about saving my downside. Though I'm optimistic about the future, but I'm paranoid about saving my downside." So we'll talk about it later. But yes, let's get into the life cycle of greed and fear. So how it happens? First, you assume good news is permanent, right? So when everything is going around good, you think that this is a permanent, nothing can happen. And then because of this, you become oblivious to the bad news, right? And then you start ignoring the bad news. Then you deny the bad news. Then you get panic at the bad news, right? Then you accept the bad news. Eventually, you have to accept the bad news. And then you say, then you assume bad news is permanent, right? And then you become oblivious to the good news. Then the good news cannot happen. This is how the cycle of market also works, right? Up and down, a lot of emotions, euphoria, fear, anger, anxiety, everything happens in a cycle, right? So this is exactly, and then you ignore the good news, deny good news, and the cycle repeats. This is how the world works, and this is how the life cycle of greed and fear works. So if somebody thinks that recession can be eradicated, recession can be removed away, it's very difficult, because what Hyman Minsky, who is an economist at Washington University, says, and he's not putting any maths and formulas here, right, to arrive at the point that recessions will happen at any cost. It has to happen because of these psychological factors. What are the psychological factors? That when an economy is stable, people get optimistic. When people get optimistic, they go into debt. And when they go into debt, the economy becomes unstable. Is this correct? Right? So stability is destabilizing. Very important line. Stability is destabilizing, right? So a lack of recession actually plants this.
Sharad, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
We say that when people get optimistic, they go into debt.
Yes.
Now, is it debt always bad? Because he said
No,
that
no.
when they go into debt, the economy become unstable.
Yes.
To fund businesses, people do need debt, right?
Yes.
They need
So
borrowing.
optimum. So we are talking about optimum debt is good, optimum leverage is good. But when you are optimistic, then you go overboard, which is bad. Right? When we are talking about fear of recession, then we are not talking about a calculated debt, right? When you get overboard and when you need to go into debt, the economy becomes unstable, right? And it will happen because of the greed and fear cycle. This will happen, and this has happened, and because of which we have seen so many recessions in the past. So hence recession cannot be eradicated.
So here
Hence,
when we
always
say
remember
debt,
this line.
here when we read debt, we need to understand that this is going overboard,
This is going overboard.
over
Correct.
capacity of your borrowing.
Absolutely. We have to see debt equity, and if the debt equity ratio is not great, then we have to be careful. So always remember that stability is destabilizing, and a lack of recession actually plants the seed for the next recession. Now, the same thing happens for the stock market, right? If we assume, for example, let's talk about the real practical thing. 2020, since 2020, the markets have been just going one way, right? We had seen a Sensex of 42,000, and from 42,000 to 80,000 in the last 4-5 years. So if people start believing that the markets can never go down, they will take extreme risk, right? They will mortgage their house. They will sell their kidneys, right? I'm not making it up. It's written in the book that they will sell their kidneys. And what I mean by selling their kidneys is that, and I have seen that when I interact with my client, that they say कि शरद ये बैंक में FD में पैसा क्यों पड़ा है 6% पे? Why don't you put this money into the market? Here, the market has given me 18% CAGR, right? So when everything is going good, this is how the investors behave, right? They take extreme risk. And when they take extreme risk, the prices go up, right? It has to become in a bubble zone. And when it goes into the bubble zone, then this market is prone to any negative news, not the surprises. It is prone to any negative surprise, right? It can be the smallest factor that the quarterly results have not come up, or the inflation in US has gone up. Whatever may be the reason, it can be the smallest factor. But when you are taking the markets to a overvalued position, it can actually get surprised by negative at any minute. And with the asset priced high, the markets would be hanging on a thread. And the irony is, when the markets are guaranteed not to crash, they are far more likely to crash. Always remember this. So when in September of 2024, We were all thinking that the market will become a lakh Sensex or a 30,000 Nifty. What happened all of a sudden on 1st October? The market started crashing. For what reason? Nobody knows exact the reason. Later on, we can do a postmortem that the Trump brought in the tariff war and all that. But any bad news after a stretched valuation will be a bad news, will be a surprising news, and hence the market crash. And this exactly happens everywhere. Let's talk about America in 1900. Very interesting numbers. 800 out of lakh Americans die each year from the infectious disease. 800 out of 1 lakh. 2014, it came down to 46 out of a lakh, right? See the 94% decline in terms of people getting infected with a disease, right? Now, decline in the deaths from infectious disease has made the world less equipped to handle psychologically, and because of the medical infra, everything becomes complacent. And then comes the calm of 2020. Jan, Feb, we never knew that there is a COVID around. And by March end, we were having COVID all around, right? We were seeing the bad numbers coming from US, Europe, everywhere, including China. And so irony of good time is that they breed complacency and skepticism of warnings, right? We start doubting the warnings. Even if we get the warnings, we start doubting the warnings. And that brings me to the point where I say the word paranoia. If you pick up the book, The Psychology of Money, which is Morgan Housel's part 1, and Vishal, you have read this book. There is a point where somebody asked Michael Morris. Michael Morris is the billionaire head of Sequoia Capital. Sequoia Capital is one of the largest private equity firms worldwide. And somebody asked him that, how did you survive good 60, 70 years while other firms have just, vanished? So he said, though we are optimistic about the future, but we are also paranoid about not losing out, because of something coming up. So basically, we have a survival strategy, what he says. So he uses the word paranoid. Paranoid means that I go mad, while everything is looking rosy, I still am paranoid. I'm fearful. I'm, trying to protect my bottom downside. So, but not everyone is Sequoia Capital. Paranoia leads to success because it keeps you on your toes, right? Paranoia leads you to success, but paranoia is stressful. So you abandon it quickly once you achieve the success, right? And now, since you have abandoned what you made you successful, you begin to decline, which is even more stressful, right? So Jerry Seinfeld, and this is very interesting. Listen this out. Jerry Seinfeld, the actor, he had a very popular show on the TV. And he had a very popular show. He was in the best of the times, his rating was amazing. And then he all of a sudden quit. So somebody said, why did you quit now? When you were doing so well, right? So what he said was amazing. He said, the only way I can know I can know my top is only during the decline. Are you understanding at this point? That the only way I can know my top is when I am in the declining phase, right? When I'm in the declining phase, then only can say, okay, wo mera top tha, right? So this is what Jerry Seinfeld did. He quit at the top. Today, I can relate it to, say, Dhoni, who made everything big for himself, but then today he's out of the IPL playoff, in the latest IPL. Maybe, this is something linked to it that he could have quit and, quit at a very respectable, fame and everything. So, yeah, so this has happened. He killed his show while it was thriving was because the only way to know where the top is to experience the decline. Now, let's talk about, the stock markets. We all talk about, are the stocks overvalued? What is the Bitcoin worth? How high can Tesla go, right? There is no formula. Is there a formula to understand whether the stock is overvalued, undervalued? Again, I said the stories will not give you the correct picture, will not give you the correct number, even though you are good at maths. So, so they can't be predicted. It's like asking somebody that what kind of mood you will be in 3 years, right? If I can't tell what kind of mood I'll be in 3 years, I can't even talk about these numbers, because everywhere it is the emotions, it is the sentiments and everything plays into picture before, I can tell a number to the company. Now, it has given an example of tire. How does tire know what is the maximum capacity it can run? So you put the tire in the car, you make it run at the highest speed till the tire bust. till the tire bust. And that is when you know that what capacity this tire can have, what is the limitations this tire can have. And similarly in the stock market, right? It is only when the market start coming down, the market has already tested people's madness, people giving money in the over optimistic market, overbought market, right? That is, so in the market, when there is a crash, please don't be fearful. It is only that the tire has got bust. It is only that the valuation has gone to an extreme level where, the things have fizzled out. So that is all, basically linking with the valuation and other many things. Now let's move to the next chapter. Too much, too soon, too fast. So Warren Buffett once joked that you can't make a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. Right? I'm sure many of you must have heard of this. Right? Just a second. Okay. So there is a story of Robert Wadlow. Robert Wadlow was 6 feet when he was just age 7. Right? He was 7 feet when he was 11. And when he died at age 22, he was 9 feet and 500 pounds. The point it says is that you can't triple the size of a human and expect triple the performance. The evolution of human being is such that it gives you an appropriate size. Whether you are an insect, whether you are a mouse, whether you are a human being, there is something called a most convenient size, right? If you make a man fall from the 7th floor, he will die. But if you make fall insect from the 7th floor, he will survive. So the evolution is such that, the size has been decided, has been designed in such a way that it is the most convenient size. Okay. And what is the most convenient size for the others? The fleas, they can jump 2 feet, huge relative to their tiny size. Scaling up wouldn't work. Why? Because in physics, there is something, physics like air resistance and energy won't let you scale. And every animal has an optimal size. So it is talking about the most convenient size. But what is the most convenient time in investing? That is very important. So what is the most convenient investing time horizon? So that is the period in which the market always rewards your patience. So can anybody tell me in Indian stock market, what is the most convenient investing time horizon? Has anybody seen that graph which talks about that if you are investing for, say, 5 years, there is a 95% chance that you will not have a negative return. I'm talking about the Indian markets. The US market, I'll just show you the graph. If you are investing for 5, yeah, Virat?
Is it 10-year plus?
So 5 years, if you see any index, they have given 95% possibility that it is positive. Okay, 10 years, it has never been 95, it is always 100. In Indian stock market, I'll just show you the US graph. Okay, so this is the US graph. It shows that if somebody had invested money for 5-year horizon, there is a 80% possibility that he's making a positive return. And somebody 15 years, 20 years, it's almost like not the capital not getting eroded. This is the most convenient time horizon. So what I'm comparing is the most convenient size and the most convenient time, right? So if somebody is into this time of 5 years to 10 years, then the chances of losing money is very, very less. And similarly, it works for other companies. There is a story of Starbucks. Starbucks, over the 23 years of existence had only 425 stores in 1994. And then as a strategy, they went all into opening the new stores. In 1999, it opened 625 new stores. In a single year, they opened up 625 new stores. By 2007, it was opening 2,500 stores a year. Almost like 1 in every 4 hours. So the growth was too fast, leading to store saturation. and sales growth fell by half, even though the economy was booming. In 2008, the result was Starbucks closed 600 stores and laid off 12,000 employees, and the stock price came down 73%. So the ex-CEO, Howard Schultz, he commented that the company's push to grow from under 1,000 to 13,000 led to watering down of the Starbucks experience. So what was the convenient size for Starbucks? The convenient size for Starbucks was under 1,000 stores, right? This is what, so growth by opening the new stores cannot be a strategy. It can be a tactical move for a company, but growth by opening the new stores, spreading lean, far and thin, thinking that the sales will grow up, will only water down the customer's experience. And this is what they realized when the stock price came down 73% and they had to leave and they had to ask 12,000 employees to go. So a most convenient size for Starbucks was less than 1,000 stores. So what it says is that when companies ignore the natural or most convenient growth pace, just like investors can go wrong by ignoring the most convenient time horizon. It also gives you an example of a tree. The tree, if it grows in the full sunlight, right? If the tree grows in the full sunlight, in the beginning, it will gorge on the sunlight and go very lean and thin. It will go very lean and thin. But one strong wind can erode its root. But a tree which grows under the shade of a bigger tree, right? Because it grows slow, because its roots gets entangled in the earth, that is the most convenient way of growing a tree. So a forced growth, accelerated growth, artificial growth, they all tend to backfire. So we cannot hurry up the process, right? You can't produce a baby in 1 month, right? So don't hurry up the process. The next chapter is when the magic happens. So this talks about that when is the magic happening? Magic is happening only when there is a crisis. And the most important innovations have happened only when things were not fine, right? For example, in New York in 1911, there was a company called Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. There was a fire in the factory and 146 immigrant women died. And that triggered a massive reforms in the worker safety, fire codes, and labor laws. So it says that stress, pain, discomfort, shock, and disgust, for all its tragic downsides, it's also when the magic happens, right? Similarly, we all have experience, which is not very old. COVID-19. What happened during the COVID-19? The healthcare system rapidly adapted with the telemedicine. The vaccine development just went full throttle. We started working remotely, right? Everything changed. The work-life balance changed. Education, we all know we became online. Today, we are touch online thanks to the magic happened or the innovation happened during that time. And the government and the central bank responded with stimulus, low interest rates, and money printing. That is only happens when there is a crisis and when there is a chaos and when you have a fear of losing out. Now look at all these innovations which have happened in the past. The radar, the atomic energy, the internet, processors, rockets, helicopters, microwave, synthetic rubber. Can you tell me who was the first user of all these innovations? Who was the first user? And it's written right there. It was the military. Why military? Because they have big problems that need to be solved now. Because they have a fear that Adolf Hitler might take over the world. Hence, they are the first one to adopt the new technology, the new innovation, because they deal with the problems which are very important, very urgent, and very vital. And they don't have any limitation of money and manpower, right? So 1930, we all know that America went through a Great Depression, and the Great Depression lasted for 10 years. But what happened during the 10 years is amazing. So by 1941, after 10 years, America was producing 40% more than 1929. They used to manufacture 1 million in 1912. They started manufacturing 29 million cars by 1929. They built the Golden Gate Bridge in 1934. Electrification surged in the rural areas. Female participation went up. First supermarket came in 1930. Factories made assembly lines like Ford. High school graduation surged. World War II started on a horseback and ended with nuclear fission in 1945, the Hiroshima Nagasaki. So NASA got formed in 1958, and imagine in just 11 years, they landed on moon. Right? So this I'm sure everybody must have heard of, that hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times, right? So it's a cycle. And this is what Richard Nixon, the American president, said, that the unhappiest people of the world are those in the international watering places like the south coast of France, Newport, and the Palm Springs. These are the unhappiest people, right? They're going to parties every night, playing golf every afternoon, drinking too much, talking too much, thinking too little, retired, no purpose. So while there are those that would totally disagree with this and say, Guy, if I could just be a millionaire, that would be the most wonderful thing. If I could just not have to work every day, if I could just be out fishing or hunting or playing golf or traveling, that would be the most wonderful life in the world. They don't know life. This is what Richard Nixon is saying, that they don't know what is life. Because what makes life mean something is purpose, a goal, the battle, the struggle, even if you don't win it. And with this, we move to the next chapter, overnight tragedies and long-term miracles. So what are overnight tragedies and long-term miracles? Long-term miracles take time, right? But overnight tragedies don't take time. 9/11, it happened precisely in 1 hour, 2 hours. The entire building, which must have been created in years together, came crashing down in 2 hours. So let's see what this chapter talks about. So Warren Buffett says, just a second, I'll mute here. Warren Buffett says that it takes 20 years to build the reputation and just 5 minutes to destroy one. So President Eisenhower in 1955, he suffered a massive heart attack. So though he survived that massive heart attack, but that message was enough for the doctors and the medical fraternity to go all out and see how it can be prevented. And with those efforts, heart disease rates declined over 70% since 1955. Now, if you have to understand 70%, this is basically translates to 25 million Americans were saved. They would have died had, this research and the effort of the medical fraternity would not have happened. 25 million more Americans would have died, right? Now, 25 million Americans basically translates to, in these 60 years, that translates to almost 500,000 Americans every year and around a stadium full of Americans every month, right? What it results is, in number terms, is only 1.5% per year from 1950 to 2014. See, had you not seen the 1.5%, you would have actually built statues for the cardiologists, right? Because they did amazing job. But had the newspaper published, right, in 2014 that only the annual decline in the heart disease was 1.5% per year, probably that was not a great news. So compounding takes a while, right? A lot of things get ignored. For example, it took 200 years from discovering germs cause disease and another 90 years to use penicillin to save somebody from getting the disease. Similarly, for the economic growth, I'm talking about America, real GDP per capita increased 8-fold in the last 800 years, but this averages only 3% per year, which is easy to ignore. And what about the bad news? It comes instantly. Pearl Harbor, 9/11, COVID-19, they just took maybe a couple of months. Pearl Harbor happened within an hour. 9/11, as I said, within hours. And COVID-19 just took, I think, a couple of months from nothing to everything. So the bad news comes instantly. For example, for Lehman Brothers, which is a 158-year-old company, imagine the time and energy it would have taken to build the reputation of a company like Lehman Brothers, collapsed in 15 months, right? From a well-known to a complete bankrupt. And why it happens. And this is an amazing line which I read in the book. And probably that is what gives reading book, I mean, we get a kicker out of the book, is that growth always fights against competition that slows its size, that slows its rise. What does this mean? Growth always fights against competition that slows its rise. That is the reason compounding looks slow. Because, and I have a couple of examples, when Franklin Templeton, those who understand the asset management, they had a bad name 3 years back when they shut down their 6 schemes, right? Other AMCs, other mutual fund companies took an advantage and came hammering on Franklin Templeton that this is probably nobody could do, So the bad news accumulated so fast that it gave a very bad name to Franklin, to the extent that everybody pulled out, money from the debt funds. That was on the negative side. It happened quickly. But Franklin Templeton must have taken 100 years to build that reputation. And it took so long because the competition eats into their growth, right? Nobody will let you go wild without giving you or pulling you down, right? So hence it takes time. So growth always fights against competition that slows its rise. A human being, must have taken years. It must have taken thousands of years to become a human being, what it is today, the complex human being. But what about the death? One organ failure, right? You are dead. Construction, as I said, it requires a lot of skilled laborers, but it takes just one hammer to bring it down, one dynamite to bring the entire building down. Peace in the world. What peace you see around is because many countries are not doing something which can go against the peace. That's a lot of efforts. But one madman somewhere can erode the peace because of his own whims and fancies and understanding of the world. And with this, we come to the chapter number 12, tiny and magnificent. Anybody, any questions? So we can take it up. Otherwise, we keep moving. Tiny and magnificent. Tiny things make things magnificent. So tell me, somebody who's obese, has he become obese because of 3 large meals in the day or eating multiple snacks in the day? Is it 3 large meals in the day, homemade large meals in the day, or multiple snacks in the day? Who becomes obese?
Multiple snacks.
Very nice.
Obvious choice. Huh?
Absolutely correct, Purva. Absolutely correct. Small things. increase in obesity is not necessarily people eating larger meals. It is eating more small snacks throughout the day. So catastrophe, when it happens from the series of tiny risks that multiply and compound into something huge. Now, listen, this is very interesting. We all talk about compounding. We have many number of examples on compounding, but this example is amazing. How small things can magnify into big. So the first nuclear bomb was developed by the end of World War II, 1944, and they dropped it at Hiroshima, Nagasaki in 1945. Within a decade, the world had so many nuclear bombs that if somebody would have taken an initiative, or if one would have dropped, within 60 seconds, the other country would have vanished. That would have happened had somebody initiated of taking the nuclear route. So in 1960, US thought that let's have smaller nuclear bombs. Why to use the bigger ones? Let's use the smaller nuclear bombs. And it was a good idea because the smaller nuclear bomb was 650 times less powerful. It could have made a limited damage. But then they realized one thing, that a small one, if one country uses, it justifies the use of the big one for the next country. Right? So if somebody uses a smaller, the other country gets all the right to use the bigger one. So that could have failed had we had small nuclear bombs, even of a lower intensity. So small risk weren't the alternative to big risk, they were the trigger. Similarly, nobody knew in 1929 that the recession will happen in America. Okay. I mean, you would have laughed away if the stock market, somebody told you that will fall 90% and the unemployment will rise up to 25%. Somebody would have laughed if somebody would have predicted it, 1929. But what happens in the isolated events happening here and there? For example, the stock market, when it fails, see the linkages of a bigger crisis. When the stock market fails, the boss loses his savings. And when the boss loses the saving, he lays off the people. And the people default on their home loans, and the bank goes under, and the bank fails, people lose their savings. The bigger chunk of people lose savings. And when they lose their savings, they stop spending. And when they stop spending, the businesses fail. And when the businesses fail, the banks fail. And when the banks fail, people lose their saving, and so endlessly. Right? So all the events in isolation, the stock market falling, bank failing, people don't have money, all these are isolated events. But the amalgamation, the combined power of all these small events is a big one, which resulted into the 1929, the Great Depression, what we know, and which lasted for almost 10 years. Similarly, during the COVID, right, we got to know about the COVID, that a new virus has transferred to humans. It has always happened before. No, not a very new thing. It has been happening for 100 years. And those humans interacted with other people. Of course, they do that. It was a mystery for a while. It is understandable. And then the bad news was likely suppressed. Bad but common. The other countries thought it would be contained. Standard denial. All these events are happening in isolation. And then it didn't act fast enough. So bureaucracy, we weren't prepared, over optimism, and could respond only with the blunt force lockdowns. So many things in isolation happened, but together, if they came and added up, that resulted into the wildfire pandemic across the globe. And the most astounding force in the universe is evolution. How a single cell organism converts into a human who can read on the iPad with a terabyte of storage. He has 20/20 vision. 20/20 vision is when you can see somebody standing 20 feet away. Flying birds, immune systems. And all these changes happened over 3.8 billion years. So it is saying that take a minuscule small change and compound it by 3.8 billion years. Compound, which means year will be in the exponent. You will see the magic. And that is what the magic happens when you are investing. The only problem is that we don't understand the ability of exponential function. We don't understand exponential function. And what is exponential function? When I say exponential function, I'm saying 2 to the power 3, 2 to the power 8, 2 to the power 25. It is 2 to the power that 25 is the exponent. That 25 is the time, which he's saying 3.8 billion, which when it compounds, for example, if I just give you a number, if I add 8 9 times, it is 72. But if I multiply 8 9 times, any guess what would be the number? If I add 8 9 times, it is 72. But if I multiply 8 9 times, what could be the number? It is 13 crores. That is how big number it becomes when 8 becomes an exponent, right? 8 to the power 9 we are talking about, right? So the most important question is not that how can I earn the highest return. The most important question after understanding the exponential power is that what are the best returns I can sustain for the longest period of time. I hope we all have read the formula for compounding. It is A is equal to P bracket 1 plus R by 100 to the power T. Class 8th compounding formula. T is in the power. T is the exponent. And T is depends how much money we will make over the next so many years. So what are the best returns I can sustain for the longest period of time? Do you want a 20% return for the next 10 years? Or do you want 10% returns for the next 20 years? Let's unmute and understand. Do you want 20% returns for the next 10 years? Or do you want 10% returns for the next 20 years? Where is the compounding?
Longer the time,
10%
higher the
return
compound.
for 20 years.
Yeah. So exactly that is the point. So what are the
Somebody
best
else was
returns?
saying something.
Yeah.
I was saying it is a 10% return for 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The longer the time, the more the money. And it will be a great calculation to do. A 20% for 10 years and 10% for 20 years, 10% for 20 years will rule over the 20% for the next 10 years. And with this, we move to the next chapter, elation and despair. Oh, okay. So we are already 40 minutes. So elation and despair, what do you mean by the line written underneath that optimism and pessimism coexist? Can optimism and pessimism coexist? Can you be optimistic and can you be pessimistic at the same time? Generally not. But let's see what the author wants to say. It says that progress requires optimism and pessimism both to coexist. And when I was talking about investing, you have to be optimistic about the future, but save like a pessimist. When I say save like a pessimist, if you are doing a 20,000 rupees per month, save 30,000 per month, thinking that my return may not be 10%, it can be 8%. Let me compensate for the drop in 2%. That is pessimism on saving, though you are optimistic on the future returns. That pessimism and optimism coexist, and that should coexist. And that is what I said, paranoid. Though you are optimistic about the future, but paranoid about losing the future, right? So here is a story. I mean, this book has a lot of stories. This story is of the Stockdale, who was the high military commander in US, who was taken as a prisoner of war when he was fighting in Vietnam. So when he came out of the prison after 10 years, somebody asked him that how depressing the life in prison was? He said it was never depressing at all. He never lost faith that he will never be, reunited with his family and he will never come out. It was never there in the mind. But then he was asked another question. Who were the people who suffered the most? And he said, who suffered the most? It was the pure optimist. Who suffered the most? It was the optimist. Why? Because they thought that the next Christmas they will be free. And so they were happy about it. And when it didn't come, when the next Christmas came and went, they were more unhappy. So a balance between needing unwavering faith that things will get better while accepting the reality of brutal facts, whatever it may be. Things will eventually get better, but we are not going home by Christmas is a better combination of pessimism and optimism. So planning like pessimist and dreaming like an optimist. If we talk about Bill Gates, we know three things: really smart, really competitive, really, really persistent. But one thing we don't know, that he insisted on always having enough cash in the bank to keep the company alive for 12 months with no revenue coming in. That is the pessimism and that is the paranoia of survival. So these people are called rational optimists, right? And so what is the trick? And this is taken from the book Psychology of Money, that more than I want big returns, and this is the snapshot you should take and put it somewhere which you can see daily. More than I want big returns, I want to be financially unbreakable. And if I'm unbreakable, I actually think I'll get the biggest returns because I'll be able to stick around long enough for compounding to work wonders. Virat? Right? So this is an amazing line, that I want to be financially unbreakable. I cannot make my entire portfolio of mid and small caps. I cannot be owning those multi-baggers in expectation that they will become 10 times, 20 times. I need to have a core portfolio. Core portfolio may be made by the large and the mega large and the stocks which are driving the economy, right? That is when you will become unbreakable, so that you survive long enough for the compound to work wonders. Casualties of perfection. So now we have smaller chapters, will take lesser time. So casualties of perfection. What is perfection? Everybody is striving for perfection. Everybody wants that there should not be an hour wasted. But if I say that you waste years by not being able to waste hours, what does this mean? What does this mean? That you waste years by not being able to waste hours. If your job is to be creative and think through tough problems, then you need to be inefficient. You need to be out of your daily curriculum, daily routine job, and be thinking, right? People may think it's a waste of time, but please exit from your cabin, exit from the office, take a stroll in the woods and think about what you're doing. See the bigger picture. So somebody asked one day that, would you like to invest in a company where the CEO is extremely busy, back-to-back meetings, flying from one city to another? Or would you like to invest in a company where the CEO for half of the time is sitting idle? Probably that exactly what it means. That somebody who's sitting idle is thinking beyond the horizon, right? He's creative. And a lot of people who have built anything meaningful in this world have been creative people who have not been busy being busy, right? So a little inefficiency is wonderful. So George Shultz, the former secretary of US, it says that his hour of solitude was the only way he could find time to think about the strategic aspect of his job. Otherwise, he would be constantly pulled into moment-to-moment tactical issues, never able to focus on larger questions of the national interest. एक बार चार्ली मंगर, वॉरेन बफे, they were the two partners, बर्कशायर हैथवे. चार्ली मंगर से पूछा कि वॉरेन बफे करता क्या पूरे दिन? An amazing reply. I would say half of the time he spends sitting on his ass and reading. He has a lot of time to think. This is what Charlie Munger talks about Warren Buffett. Half of the time he's sitting on his ass and reading. Right? And इसी से एक word design हुआ hustle porn. Lot of corporates are lost in hustle porn. What is hustle porn? Work excessively long hours, sacrifice sleep, rest and personal time, constant talk about grinding, never stopping, treat burnout as a badge of honor. That is the hustle porn. The world over believes in just-in-time manufacturing, just-in-time publishing of the book. There is no room for error. There is no room for error. There is no room for inefficiency. आज पूरा America is dependent upon China because everything is bought in America is China. They had no room for error. Had they kept some room, diversified their supply chains to other countries, they would have been in a better position to negotiate. In your portfolio, believe me, if some fund manager is holding cash, please don't criticize him for holding cash. He may not be invested, but the day the market falls, he is the king because he can deploy that cash. Lot of fund managers believe in that concentrated portfolio. मेरे को तो केवल 10 कंपनी लेनी है because I know these companies well. एक गलती होती है, the whole portfolio returns goes down. Whereas the diversification, again, the inefficiency, diversification is what? When you're putting eggs in all basket. Inefficiency है, inefficient model है, but it works. Right? So author कहता है कि मैं अपना पोर्टफोलियो डिस्क्राइब करता हूं गुड इनफ. मुझे पता है कि दुनिया प्रोडक्टिव रहे होगी आगे चल के. आई एम कॉन्फिडेंट मार्केट्स विल एलोकेट द रिवॉर्ड्स ऑफ द प्रोडक्टिविटी टू इन्वेस्टर्स ओवर टाइम. इसलिए मेरे पास बहुत टाइम एंड बैंडविड्थ है कि मैं लोगों के बिहेवियर को पढ़ सकूं एंड अकॉर्डिंगली मैं अपना पोर्टफोलियो कंस्ट्रक्ट कर सकूं. And with this, we move to chapter 15. It's supposed to be hard. डॉनर फैमिली का नाम किसने सुना? डॉनर पार्टी in 1846 decided to move from the Central America to California because 1846 में रोड्स नहीं होती थी, गाड़ियां तो सब 1900 में आई हैं, तो they had oxen, बुलक ये सब में चलते थे. तो डॉनर पार्टी headed by the Donner brothers, they took 80 people in their team and decided to cross over the desert and everything and reach California, find a way to reach California. बट एक एक्सप्लोरर था लैंसफोर्ड हेस्टिंग, उसने बोला कि इफ यू गो वाया द ऊटा यू विल रीच देयर अ मंथ अर्लियर. एंड दैट वाज द बिगेस्ट मिस्टेक because that was like crossing the scorching heat of the Great Salt Lake Desert. And the result was half of the Donner Party got killed. The point ये बता रहा है कि जो शॉर्टकट है, it is always painful. It is supposed to be hard and it has to be hard if you are trying to achieve something meaningful. एक मूवी है लॉरेंस इन अरेबिया. तो लॉरेंस क्या करता है कि एक माचिस जलाता है और उसको हाथ से दबा देता है एंड बुझा देता है. तो अदर गाय ऑल्सो ट्राइज टू कॉपी एंड ही गेट्स बर्न्ट. ही शाउटेड, व्हाट इज द ट्रिक? हाउ डिड यू डू दैट? He said the trick is not minding that it hurts. Okay. When you hire a social media consultant, he will talk about all strategies. But one thing he will not tell you. He will talk about hashtags. He will tell you the timing. He will tell you all what to do. But he will not tell you that the best method of reaching your network is to write a good stuff, which is the difficult thing. But that is the most important thing. Right? That is the original creativity, what you can do. So when you are working hard and when you are living true to what exactly you want to achieve, then price is not the value you pay. The price is in terms of the stress, uncertainty, dealing with quirky people, bureaucracy, conflicting incentives, hassle, nonsense, long hours, and many, many things. Keep running. We have now 3 chapters. So I think next 10 minutes, 15 minutes will be over. Keep running, keep running. Why hasn't evolution made every species enormous? Why hasn't evolution made every species enormous? हर कोई हाथी क्यों नहीं होता, हर कोई घोड़ा क्यों नहीं होता, हर कोई टाइगर क्यों नहीं होता? उसका एक रीजन है, राइट? उसका एक रीजन है that the tendency for evolution to create larger species is counterbalanced by the tendency of extinction to kill off larger species. It counterbalances. जो बड़ा है उसकी chances of getting extinction, उसकी chances of wiping out are also very high. Big animals are fragile. As I said, an ant falling from maybe 15th floor, it will survive, but an elephant falling from 3rd floor may, just like die in a seconds. So competitive advantages जो एक चीज में है, they don't stick around for a very, very long time, right? And competitive advantage may, it gives an example of Sears, the company which was like an Amazon of today in 1970s in America. It was the largest retailer in the world, housed in the tallest building in the world, employing one of the largest workforces, right? It went public, right? But then it lost its competitive advantage and went bankrupt, right? And most of the companies between 1980 and 2014, like General Motors, Chrysler, Kodak, and Sears, all just went bankrupt only because these are the 5 things, which takes away the competitive advantage. Pehla kya hai? That once you get bigger and you become stable, there is that instance of confidence that you can't be wrong. And this is the beginning of the end. This arrogance take a toll on you and you lose out on the competitiveness, right? Second, success tends to lead to growth for one size company. If you are a one size company and you move to another size company, there are 2 different skills required. And one company may be good at one size company, the same company may not be good in scaling up to the next level. So hence, such companies also lose their competitive advantage. Third, and it is an irony that competitive advantage has a purpose of not having to work so hard at some point of the future. And that is how you become lazy. That is how you stop looking at the competition. That is how you don't innovate. And that is how you lose the competitive advantage. And fourth is that your skill, because of which you were good at one product, may not be the skill required maybe 20 years down the line or 30 years down the line. And sometimes your growth initial may have been just because you were at the right place at the right time. An example is of Great Britain, who lost the economic and military supremacy it held in the 19th century. So any big thing will lose its competitive advantage. There are very few, those are exceptions. Those are not the facts. They are the exceptions. But most of the things which grow big, they lose their competitive advantages and go down the drain. Lehman Brothers, we have been giving examples that it prospered for 150 years, went through some 33 recessions, but what killed him is the mortgage-backed securities in 2007-8. No one's safe, no one can ever rest. No competitive advantage is so powerful that it can let you rest on your laurels. And this chapter is amazing, the wonders of the future. Wonders of the future, what does that mean? It means that a lot of innovations, what we have seen till now, let me just, yeah. So a lot of innovations, what we have seen till now, we think that those were the low-hanging fruits. For example, electric bulb was discovered, internet came in, laptop came in, you just name it. We have, the steam engine came in. So many innovations which came in the past, but now the thinking is that this cannot get replicated in the future. So in January 12, 1908, Washington Post carried an article, America's Thinking Men Forecast the Wonders of the Future. So very surprisingly, somebody asked that this article has been written when in America, every important thing was discovered, right? And who was the person who was being interviewed was the Edison himself. So Edison was asked, is the age of invention passing? He said, passing? It hasn't even started yet. So somebody then asked, you believe the next 50 years will see as great a mechanical and scientific development as the past half century? He said, greater, much greater. And why is he saying that? That's very important. It was not a blind optimism of Edison. He understood the process of scientific discovery. Big innovations don't come at once, rather are built up slowly when several small innovations are combined over time. One innovation does not happen standalone. For example, it gives you an amazing example that Edison, though it is known that he invented the light bulb, but he actually not invented it. He improved upon what others had already built. And who was that guy who actually brought electric light? Was Humphrey Davy, who invented arc lamp using charcoal rods as a filament. It was a very bright light and it could be used only for small time. Hence, it was not very practical. So Edison worked on it and invented the light bulb. So what it is trying to say is that there are a lot of small things which are happening over the decades and centuries, which have mixed up, which have added up to become, which looks like a remote possibility of happening. It is giving you an example of aerial bomb. Do you think aerial bomb, the nuclear bomb, which America dropped at Hiroshima, Nagasaki, would have been there had there been no airplane? So one innovation, airplane, actually brought the new innovation, which was nuclear bomb. Otherwise, the nuclear bomb would not have been thrown from the height and it would not have made any impact. And had the nuclear bombs not been there, we would not have understood the importance of nuclear as a technology. And today, a lot of nuclear plants, provide electricity to far and wide, cities and villages. So everything today, like Google Maps, Instagram, they have some basic model invented earlier in some other form. For example, ARPANET was already in US, which the military used to, send messages across. And that is how the internet was born. Facebook, much before the Facebook, there was already a mechanism to share the pictures of, weekends and what happened in global politics. And that is the reason Edison says that someone somewhere right now is inventing or discovering something that will utterly change the future. It also says that it can be as small as little cool air from the north and a warm breeze from the south, which looks in isolation harmless, but when they mix together over Missouri, you get a tornado. So one boring thing plus one boring thing can equal to the world-changing thing in a way that's hard to fathom if you don't respect exponential growth. So everybody knows this line, right? The grass is always greener on the side. The grass is always greener on the other side. Have you heard of this? The grass is always greener on the side. Just add one more thing. Fertilized with bullshit. Why? Because everything is sales. Everyone is trying to craft an image of who they are. Instagram is full of beach vacation photos, not flight delay photos, right? Investing gurus and business titans are easy to be taken as mythical status without being judged on their ordinary or awful investing decisions they have ever taken. Right? Bill and Melinda Gates, who were looking like a fairy tale until the news of their nasty divorce. Right? So, point what it is trying to make is that all these personalities who we think at them as the superhuman, they are normal humans with a lot of flaws. And so just don't think that they are superhumans, they can do it, we can't do it. Don't overvalue their opinion on things they have no special talent in. For example, the fund manager talking about politics. Don't overvalue because he's a fund manager and he is, the knowledge of everything. But when it comes to politics, he's as ignorant as you are, right? And then it comes to incentives. That is the most powerful force in the world. Last 2 chapters to go, maybe another 5 minutes will be done. Incentives. Incentives drive this world. It talks about 3 things a professional writer, if he wants to be famous, 3 things required. Lie to people who want to be lied to and you will get rich. Very important line. Lie to people who want to be lied to and you will get rich. Tell the truth to those who want the truth and you will just make a living. You will just thrive. Sorry, you will just survive, not thrive. Tell the truth to those who want the truth, you will just survive. And tell the truth to those who want to be lied to and you will go broke. Who want to be lied to, you will go broke. What does this mean? It says that incentives is the most powerful force in the world. Lie to the people who want to be lied to. For example, in my industry, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of investors who are, who want to get rich quickly, right? Who want to make money fast. They want to grow at 25% because somebody, they have heard that they did so. And so they bring in a very unwarranted request of 20%, 25%. Now I know he's lying. So if I don't lie to him that, yes, I can do that for you, the deal is gone. I'll be rich in that case, right? Because he is not wanting to listen to the truth. Similarly, if somebody is wanting to be lied to and I tell the truth, no, sir, this is not a great idea. We have understood compounding and small things make phenomenal money, right? That he will kick me out, right? I'll go broke. So no matter how much information and context you have, nothing is more persuasive than what you desperately want to be true. It is your perception. If you want 25%, then that is the truth. Whatever the context and information and the truth is, if you want something and you want it desperately to be true, then that is the truth. And there are a lot of incentives. It talks about a 1997 year story, बहुत पहले आई थी, Heaven's Gate, where some 30-40 people thought that there is a spaceship coming from the space, and these were religious cult, and they thought ki if we die together, we will reach the heaven. And that is how people used to be fooled during those times. I'm talking about 1997. And with this, we come to the last chapter, which is time horizon. Very interesting chapter. It says that what is time horizon? Everybody says कि I'm here for the long run. It's saying like कि मैं Mount Everest के नीचे base पे खड़ा हूं and I'm looking at the Mount Everest and saying, see, that is the top. I want to be there. But then the moment I start heading comes the real test. Everybody says कि मैं तो long run के लिए हूं. But long run, short run हो जाता है the moment they fear the first market crash or losing out on their potential gain. So long-term thinking is easier to believe in than to accomplish. It's easier to believe in than to accomplish. The long run is just a collection of short runs you have to put up with. Just by saying that I have a 10-year horizon doesn't exempt you from all the nonsense that happens, right? Recessions, bear markets, meltdowns. And this red line is amazing line. It says that the future is much like the present. The future is much like the present. It is just only longer. Today is just a part of that future, right? Today is a part of the future. So all the mayhem, all the meltdown, all the crisis, all the negative news is what you have to go through. So your belief in the long run isn't enough. Your partners, co-workers, spouses, and friends have to sign up the ride. I mean, for example, you and your spouse together on the same boat, right? If you are optimistic, the spouse is not optimistic, then probably long-term fizzles out. So you have to be in the same boat, have a same mindset, everything, then only you can look long-term. The reason so many financial professions stray towards short-termism is because it is the only way to run a viable business when customers flee at the first sign of trouble. Everybody talks long-term but acts short-term. They will tell me, Sharad, this is a 5-year money. But the moment his lakh rupee becomes 95,000 rupees, he will be the first one to point out that, hey, am I not in the right scheme? So he talks long-term, looks short-term. And that is the biggest problem. That is what author is saying कि भाई everybody is short-term. And इसीलिए मोतीलाल ओसवाल and other broking community, they talk short-term. Sir, ये stock ले लीजिए, ये खरीद लीजिए, ये बेच लीजिए. That's it. Because they know that people will talk long-term but only act short-term. And with this comes the last slide, and this is the crux of the entire book. Let's read it together. Same as it's ever been, same as it will always be, and same as it ever was. And this is what exactly the authors told us in the n number of stories, that this will all remain as it is. We have to figure out this, and we have to understand the human behavior and act accordingly. Thank you. That was all. Anybody can unmute and questions or suggestions or advice, whatever it is.